In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can make our iPhone just a little bit easier to read. This can come in handy if you're like me where you need readers and you need to make that iPhone a little bit easier to read. Well, the iPhone has various options built in that can help us do that. We can change the resolution of the iPhone. We can change the text size across all of our apps. We can even do this on an individual app basis. Now, if you find this video helpful, stick around to the end. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself and how you can help support my efforts in making these videos. All right, let's take a look at how we can make our iPhone a little bit easier to read. Let's go over to my iPhone. Let's first look at how we can change the resolution of our display. What we're able to do, much like we can with a monitor connected to a Mac or a PC, what we're able to do is actually change the resolution on this. We can make everything a little bit larger, or we can make everything a little bit smaller. We basically have two different sizes. So how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is go into the Settings app. So I tap on Settings, and then we swipe up until we find Display and Brightness. When we tap on that, we go down to the very bottom and you're going to see Display Zoom. This is basically just resolution. I have mine set for larger text, but by default, when we tap on this, by default, everything's going to be just a little bit smaller. So when we look at this on a side-by-side basis, we can see that the icons are a little bit smaller. And when we're looking at messages here, it's a little bit smaller. But if we go over to larger text here, everything's going to be a little bit larger. Make things a little bit easier to read. So all we have to do is just tap on Default or Larger Text. And again, it is going to be default, by default, of course. So I tap on it, and then I tap on Done, and what it'll do is it'll do a soft reboot, and then everything will just be a little bit smaller. So in your case, if you haven't set this up for larger text, what you'll want to do is tap on Larger Text, tap on Done, and then it'll do a soft reboot. It'll just restart. And then once you restart it, everything here will just be a little bit larger, a little bit easier to read. So that's how we can change the resolution. Now we do have more options. I'm going to go back. In addition to changing the resolution, we can also set if we want the appearance to be light or dark. This can help make things a little bit easier to read. At least in my case, I find that dark mode is a little bit easier to read. So I make sure that this automatic is turned off and I have it set to dark mode. I would recommend trying that out and just seeing if it makes things a little bit easier to read. Another thing we can do is change the text size. Now this will change it on a global basis. So every app, it's going to affect every app on your iPhone as long as they use dynamic text. So I slide this to the left or right, and you're going to see that that text size at the top is going to change. Find the text size that you want, and it's going to affect every app. I'll show you how you can do this on an individual basis or for individual apps shortly. But we just go back here, and any changes are applied. And then we also have bold text. I can make the text bold. So watch what happens in this area here when I make it bold. You're going to see that this text here is going to get bold. So I'm going to tap on the slider there, and we can see it is getting bold. Tap on it again to turn bold off. So we just tap on that to toggle it. So if you like the bolder text, just make sure that this is turned on, and that'll make things easier to read as well. We can also adjust the brightness, which adjusts the contrast, make it a little bit brighter. If you do that, just know that it does affect battery life. A brighter screen will use more battery. So those are some changes on how you can make your iPhone easier to read. We also have some more options in accessibility. So I'm going to go back. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to go to accessibility. Under accessibility, and we go over here to display and text size, you're going to see that we have more options. Again, I can make the text bold, I can change the text size, but also what I'm able to do is reduce the transparency, thereby making things a little bit easier to read. Basically what it does is it increases the contrast. Well, what about increasing contrast? Look what I can do there as well. I can increase the contrast, thereby making things easier to read. Now, any of these changes, as I mentioned, will affect the entire iPhone, all of the apps across the entire iPhone. Well, let's say you wanted to make changes for a specific app. Maybe you're having a hard time with a specific app. Well, we can also make most of these changes for specific apps. And the way that we do that is through in-app settings. And what we need to do, I'm going to go back. We're going to start over here. What we need to do is go over to our Settings app. And then from Settings, we go over here to Accessibility. And when we're looking at accessibility, at the very bottom, we have Per App Settings. So this will allow us to make all of those changes, or most of those changes that I just showed you, on a per app basis. So now I tap on Per App Settings, and here are the apps that I've customized. Let's go and customize another app. We're going to go with Messages. Maybe I have a hard time reading Messages, but I don't have a hard time with any of the other apps. So I want to make some per app settings. All I have to do is just tap on Add App, and then I swipe up to find Messages. Tap on it. And then from here, I tap on Messages. And when I do, you're going to see a lot of the same options. But what this will do is this will only affect the Messages app. Any changes I make here will not affect any of the other apps. So I can make the text bold only in the Messages app. I can reduce transparency only in the Messages app. I can increase contrast only in the Messages app. So if you're having a problem with a specific app, just go into the per app settings here and add that app. Once you add that app, you're going to be able to make adjustments on a per app basis. Now, the last thing I want to show you is how we can change the text size on the fly. And we can do this through the Control Center. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flick down on the Control Center here. This is how I get to my Control Center. And again, I am using iOS 18. So you're going to see that I have this control here to change the text size. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this, and then we're going to re-add it so you can see how this all works, because this is not on by default in the Control Center by default. So I long press in this area here, and I tap on the minus to get rid of that control. So now I'm looking at my Control Center. What I'd like to do is add that text size control so I can adjust the text size on the fly. Well, I long press in this area again to get to my edit mode. I'm in my edit mode. I tap on Add a Control, and I search for Size. I could also search for Text, and you're going to see I have the control here to change the text size. So now I just tap on that, and we can see it added it to my Control Center. I'm going to bring this down a little bit so we can see it easier, and there's my control. So now I want to change the text size. Well, basically all I have to do is just drag this up and down and it'll change the text size. When I do that, it's going to change the text size across all of my apps at the same time. So this is not on a per app basis. So I make this really large, and when we go over here to Messages, it's really large. We go over here to Files, it's really large, because I'm adjusting it on a global basis. But we can also do this on a per app basis as well. I swipe down to get to my Control Center. We just flick down from the upper right hand corner. And instead of just dragging this up and down, what I need to do is I need to long press on it. Let's just bring this into the middle here. And now I long press on it. And from here, you're going to see I have another option. By default, it is going to adjust the text size for all apps, as you saw. But if I slide it over to the left, what I'm able to do is adjust the text size only for that app that I'm in this case here, the Files app. So I'm going to make the Files app really small. And now what we're going to do, get out of the Control Center. You can see it's really small. And we're going to go to the Messages app. Let's make this really large. So I flick down to get to my Control Center. I long press on my text size here. And then I slide this over to the left, so I just slide that over. And any changes that I make here are going to affect the Messages app only. So let's make this text really large. So now my text in the Messages app is really large, but everything else, or at least in the Files app, it's going to be small. Let's go and make this in the middle. So everything is going to be in the middle by default. But when I go to the Files app, it's going to be really small. And when I go to the Messages app, it's going to be really large. So let's make sure that that works. So let's go with the Files app, really small. Let's go into the Messages app, really large. Let's go into the Settings app, normal size. So that's how you can do this from the Control Center as well. What we need to do is add that control. Now, if you want to change the text size for one of those per app settings, let's say I made the Messages app a little large. I want to make that back to default. What I do is I open up the Messages app. We have to go back into the app. We flick down from the upper right-hand corner to get to my control center. We long press on this, and we can see that I'm affecting the Messages app only because I'm in the Messages app. And now all we need to do is just slide this over to the right. And what it's going to do is erase any settings that I made there. So now I bring this up here. The default is going to be 100% for all of my apps, and it is back to normal size. So those are the different ways we can make our iPhone a little bit easier to read. We can do everything from changing the resolution on the entire display to changing the text size or changing the contrast on a global basis. It'll affect every app. And then we can even go down to a per app basis. We can set the text size and the contrast on a per app basis. This is all done in the Accessibility app under per app settings. And then if you want to add the control to change the text size, you can do that as well. Then it's easy to change the text size directly from the control center. So those are the ways that we can make our iPhone a little bit easier to read. Now, if you found this video helpful, what you may want to do is like the video. You can share it with your friends and family. You can subscribe to my channel. In addition to that, you may want to check out danstutorials.com. Not only do I have more videos, but I also have an AI assistant modeled after an Apple Genius, and I host classes and webinars on a regular basis. So how can you help support my efforts? Well, it is a membership-based site. When you become a member, I take out all of the ads from the video, so you're not going to see any of those ads in the videos. You also have access to my AI assistant modeled after an Apple Genius, and you have access to my classes and webinars. You also are helping support a small business. It is just me. I'm not part of some large organization. So when you become a member, you are directly supporting my efforts in creating these videos. Check out danstutorials.com for more information, and thanks for watching.